Good afternoon, good morning, good evening, whatever time it is, in whatever part of the world you're tuning in from. Thank you so much and welcome to the channel. For those of you who don't know who I am, my name's Samuel, and as you can probably see from the channel, we've shifted from Sheng Yoga to Sheng Movement, and I've left some of the yoga stuff in there so you can see kind of where I'm coming from and the direction that's brought me to this point now. There's a deeper why for the channel change, for the content change at least, yet I'll save that for a later video. I want to keep this short and sweet so we can take a tour of the project that I am diving into now. Simply, I love being in nature. It really helps with my mental health, with my various neurodivergence, and it also allows me to grow my own food, which I love doing, and I want to explore that more. And over the years, I've always had an interest in building stuff, whether that be structures, whether that be renovating homes, or simply carving tiny little wooden spoons and animals. Either way, getting into this project allows me to explore all of those avenues, and I thought, seeing as I'm going to be recording so much of it for myself, just to see the progress and to share that with my family, why not make that public? Why not make it available to yourselves? So if you have an interest in those things, you can see firsthand the journey. You can learn as I'm learning, because I will be dipping into all sorts of permaculture, wood and craft books. I'll be going online, and if there's anyone out there who has some insight into stuff that I'm doing, ways in which I can improve my processes, or maybe seeds that I need to check out, various sites that I could maybe be buying natural predators from to help keep down the bugs in my garden, and the list goes on. Anyway, I'm really looking forward to sharing this journey with you. It's going to be great. For myself, at least, I hope you find the stuff interesting and helpful. If you've got any questions or you've got any input for the channel, please comment below and I'll get back to you. At this point, all I have to say is, hope you enjoy. If you do, please do one of the many actions that I'm sure you're familiar with to help support the channel. And for now, I will leave you with a little tour of the garden that you can see. So we'll take a little walk through the garden now. You can see our compost bin here. Some persistent little potatoes. They'll grow from the tiniest cutting. We've got a couple of sheds down here. You can see a third one in the back. We've got a few greenhouses, so you'll see them in some of the earlier videos that I'm going to do, because that's the first stage, is our nursery. We've got to get our little plants growing. And here you can see some work that we've just kind of let go for a bit, let the garden recover. All of this was covered with a thick blanket of gorse. So just up at the top there, you can see these beautiful yellow flowers on a very spiky bush. I'll show you what we have down on the ground, because we're not going to take out the roots. We've decided to hold the bank together a little bit while we're still doing work. And it's actually, at this young stage, is really quite soft, is delicate. I actually find it really attractive. But it does leave a blanket of needles on the ground that will break down. It's actually one of the early stages of a forest coming back, or just like natural woodlands. It protects all these small trees, so everywhere that we had this, was protecting all these little ones. So as soon as we cut back the gorse, we found all these tiny trees, so we're keeping them in. They'll likely get moved on at some point. I might use them for some arbotexture. I'll touch on that in a later video. And you can see some of the existing paths that we put in many, many moons ago. We just used these boards. It was very straightforward. It was quick, it lasted. This tannized wood, it stays for ages, it's treated. But we're trying to go in a more natural direction with this next iteration of the space. So you can see here where all the gorse got cut. I really didn't want to just send it on to some processing place. I wanted to utilize everything that we have in the garden to our best advantage. So we use the gorse to make the stakes, because they can get pretty chunky. You might even see some along here that they grow like small trees almost. And so we've taken that, and this was a very, how would you say, hapdash or slapdash, a lazy start. I just wanted to get the things on the ground and get this path started. So it was catching materials and breaking down that over time, this is going to become soil, it's going to become solid, something we can even plant into, kind of almost like a hugler bed concept, where over time we just bigger material, then smaller and smaller and smaller, and then it becomes a great space for insects, for plants to grow in, and for roots to really penetrate deep. And you can see here some of the young trees that we've left in. We're just letting this space go wild at the moment, while we're working on the far end of the garden to bring that up to speed. I'm going to walk a little bit tenderly around here. It's quite lovely. There's all sorts of little flowers coming through. And let's come down here. We've got some bluebells. Anything that you spot that I don't know the name of, please hit me up in the comments. I would love to know. I've got a couple of books, but there's only so much time in the day, and sometimes I might not get to it. And I'd love to have input. I'm very new to this, really. I've had some interest from a young age. I've been exposed to this stuff. Some lovely peach. This is actually the first time we're seeing fruit on this tree. So the path this way is kind of a little bit overgrown, but it does give us a view of what's going on here. I don't know if that's a honeybee or a wasp. He's flown off too quickly. So if you come over here, you can see these huge trees. There's some pine, there's some firs. You know, they were planted a very long time ago. I think even when the houses were initially put in, or very soon after that. And they used to go all the way down the side of the house. And the ones at the back have been left. And as you can see, I'm just doing some very, very basic tree work and taking them down little bit by little bit. You'll see some of the pieces that we've done later on when we come to the bottom area where we're storing all the wood. So I'm going to step down off this path now. Go to a little bit of an easier one to walk. Last thing I want is to trip over and land on the camera. Although that would probably make for some lovely laughs. And here we have our plum. Let's have a look. There we go. There's early fruit. We had such a great blossom this year on all of our fruit trees, and that's mainly to do with what some might call slightly unusual weather. In the UK, we've had an incredible amount of heat. Anyway, so here I'm going to step back a little bit so you can see is the center path. There was the arbor, and we've got some currants down here. There's some more fruit bushes just over in that little section there. And I'll give you a closer view of this lattice work. Again, it's not super uniform because we're using the gorse, which can grow pretty gnarly, and we're using the branches from the pine tree to create our stakes. So a simple bit of notching at the top, pardon me, and then we cut a spike at the bottom. I'll show you some if I've got some made. I do down there. We don't cut straight to a point. We cut it flat at the bottom. We leave it slightly flat so it doesn't get misdirected when we're driving it into the ground. And here we go. Here's our little path. Here's a whole bunch of the gorse. As you can see, just how much there is there. We've got a pile right down at the bottom there. It was everywhere. It's probably a little late in the video. However, I hope that the sound's okay. As you can hear, it's pretty windy where we are. We're not too far from the coast. And here's all the debris from the pines. You'll get a better view now. Here we go. Just the sheer scale of them. And we're processing the wood, putting it into little piles. We've got a rough idea of what we want to use various bits for. This is pretty much just going to be firewood here. And this is what I was talking about. If you're making stakes, just leave the end flat, so if it does encounter anything in the ground, it's just gonna hit it and not be deflected in the direction of it. So yeah, there we go. So we're trying to utilize as much of the material as we can in various projects, and that's one of the tree pieces. So that was the top, not quite the top. You can see it was cut off even there, and we've just stripped all the bark back. Now, I don't know if that's the right thing to do. It just felt like the right thing to do. It does create this kind of, I don't know if this is mold or not, or some sort of fungus entirely. It does look a little bit like mold. I don't know if it's a better idea to keep the bark on to avoid this. If you know something about that and about the processing of stuff, I'm still learning. I'd love to hear from you. And then we'll come down. We're going to put in a few steps around here, but as you can see, the natural root structure is lending itself to the space. So we're trying to keep as much of that in as we can, minimize what we're doing on that side of things. But again, we're going to try and terrace this whole back space. As you can see, it's very steep. And then here's our little fire pit. There's going to be a few restoration jobs. There's a little bench. You can still sit on it, but it's you got to take it slow. It's pretty rickety. See, it's covered in all sorts of lichen and moss. So we'll try and get some nice oak if we can find some naturally fallen stuff. You know, we have storms and all sorts of things, so around this area there's plenty of wood to collect. So here's a little bundle. This is probably going to end up really as firewood for the home. We try and stick to our hardwoods and more deciduous stuff. We don't want really high resin in our house. And then this is a collection of some ash, some alder, and again the pine. You can see these pieces that we've cut off here. So that's the tops, pretty much the tops. And we'll use that probably in some simple structural building. Not entirely sure yet. And there's more. There's just so much of it. And that's our wood store again that needs repair. So that is pretty much it as a tour of the garden. We've got a little allotment plot here as well that we've got some seedlings growing in. It's been left a little bit, so some of the boxes we're just letting the nettles, the weeds come back in, and they'll just restore the health of the soil, and then we'll use a no-dig process later in the year to prepare it for the next season. So for now, that's all from me. Thank you so much for tuning in. I really hope that this has been useful for you or something that you're going to find interesting, and I'll see you again next time.